Starfield, the latest open-world RPG developed by Bethesda Game Studios, is not only releasing this year, but also is the only new IP that Bethesda themselves have developed since the game studio's inception in 2010s. So here's everything you need to know about it. Just like the intro mentioned, yes, Starfield, ever since Bethesda Game Studio division was made, is the only intellectual property they will release to date. Ever since those early 2000s, they've released already ongoing Elder Scrolls games, and of course the Fallout games that the company acquired after its developer went bankrupt. So, within 20 years of propagating the same games over and over and over and over and over, Starfield is the only new thing in their repertoire. So, what do we know about it? Well, let's begin with the basics then. Now, as many Bethesda fanboys are quick to yell out, "It's not No Man's Sky, it's an RPG!" And, yeah, sure, cute. But that does not exclude No Man's Sky either. But anyway, Starfield in more basic terms is a single-player, open-world, first-person RPG game, akin to their past games, Fallout and Elder Scrolls. Theme-wise, it's a sci-fi game with extra spaceship flying, but if you've ever played Skyrim, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, or the best one, New Vegas, you pretty much can expect a similar tone and feel. As for the release, well, the game is set to release in the first half of 2023, which should be about few months from now, yet the precise date we do not know just yet. Engine-wise, for those nerds like yours truly in the crowd, Starfield will be running Bethesda's in-house Creation 2 engine, which this will be the first game to utilize it. It's basically an improved version that Fallout 4 and 76 of all godforsaken things ran.
16 times the detail.
As for platforms, expect to see the game on Xbox and PC only, since Bethesda is now part of Microsoft. However, I don't see it staying on those platforms for too long. If the game is good, like the gaming syphilis that is Skyrim, it's going to spread everywhere if you give it time. Also, it's interesting to note that according to some developers, Starfield has been playable since 2018. And finally, it has pre-orders. Now say it with me, do not buy pre-orders. In fact, if you take anything away from today's information, it's that this is the most important. Do not buy pre-orders, damn it. So those were the basics. There's a lot more to mention, so let's just jump in. Starting with the biggest piece of information dump, the gameplay reveal trailer. We start with the spaceship landing. Now in Starfield we already know that you won't be piloting your ship into atmosphere and land wherever you want. It will be a loading screen transition, which also, while not confirmed, but hints heavily that you won't be flying your ship on the planet's surface either. However, if you skip to the leaks, it might contradict that one. However, it's unconfirmed. In any way you slice it, this is a big disappointment no matter how you justify it. Regardless, as the transition ends and you're let loose from the spaceship, you're free to walk around. Now currently it's unknown whether or not you can circumvent the planet if you really wanted to, but considering there's a likelihood that you won't be able to fly your ship in atmosphere either, it could be that there's a certain limit to the map space. So until we see more, and I'll be happy to be wrong. The next little thing we see is the scanner mode, so exploration is given a little bit more depth than just looking at things. And honestly, it's kinda hard to deny those No Man's Sky parallels here. As we glance on the HUD, you can see basic information that any FPS game would have, but for Starfield, specific details similar to space sims can be seen about the planet you are currently on, like the temperature, gravity, atmosphere, and current sun's position, or basically time of day. Moments later you see some alien creatures, and once more paraphrasing developers, they're more quote-unquote realistic, as in not super weird intelligent things, but rather creatures that could develop on planets instead, and that's the whole vibe that Starfield is gonna be going after, the early days of exploration. Additionally, we see switching between first and third person is possible. Aside from exploratory scanning type of gameplay, the next more meatier gameplay showcased is mining. And here again, No Man's Sky vibes are strong, but regardless, material collection here will be needed for base building, research and upgrading items, similar to what Fallout 4 was doing. Next up then is the first-person combat, my favorite. However, knowing how absolutely, terrible Fallout mechanics were, I was skeptical about Bethesda's ability to make a good shooter. However, what we see here is, well, relatively simple but functional gameplay. And honestly, it could be quite fun. No VATs needed. We also get the showcase of the jetpacks, and for space games it almost feels like a must. Though then again, honestly, who can say that they hate jetpacks? Their use though will be limited to simply boosting a jump rather than allowing you to fly for extended time period. Visually, you can also see the creation engine working quite well, showing off thus far the most details in the environment both far away as well as close up, looking thus far the best from all the Bethesda games. But speaking of that trailer showcasing FPS Combat, now one thing I notice is that whenever you crouch, unlike with Fallout or Skyrim, you don't see a stealth marker or indicator for it. Now, whether stealth is going to be more subtle than before is hard to say, but as far as the trailer showcases, it's non-existent there. And then we come to lockpicking minigame. No boy, yeah, people always seem to be split between these. Personally, I enjoyed Fallout 3 hacking and loved Skyrim's lockpicking, despite their simplified versions from their real-world equivalents. Hey, as long as lockpicking is not shoveled in your face like Deus Ex Human Revolution had, I'll probably be fine with it. Now, if you notice, all enemies have a number above them. Likely that indicates a level. However, it's still not clear how it affects the creatures and stats, or even your own guns. You see, I fear that if your gear gets dropped according to your level, or rather scales according to your levels, like it does say in Cyberpunk, it'll make for a really bad experience. But if the gear remains the same power no matter what level your character is, like it does in, say, Skyrim, it might be a great solution to leveling as a whole. So let's see whether or not Bethesda actually learned from Fallout 3's mistake, which universally was dogged for being too easy and boring. Here I'll skip the majority of the story stuff for the purposes of spoilers, but the basics of the story are that the Earth is no more, and like all Bethesda games, there are several larger factions and you can politically influence them, where each has their own agendas and goals. Developers also mentioned that you won't be restricted to helping one or the other, and you also won't be leading any of them. You're gonna be more of a cog in the system, or a cog in a greater machine. I feel that they're still stuck in the past, as the dialogue of the character talking to you will be just standing there, barely emoting at all. God damn it, Bethesda, come on! Regardless, despite the premise of the story for Starfield dealing with finding what's out there, I have to disappoint everyone and mention that Bethesda has never really properly released good stories. Fallout 3 had some good and even great side quests, but really bad story. Skyrim, yeah, about the same. Fallout 4, also the same. And you know, that's alright. What makes Bethesda's games stand tall are the open worlds, not the stories. Though, as New Vegas shows, it helps tremendously. Now let's take a small aside about the stories and explain how speech apparently will be changing. In one of the Q&As for Starfield, Bethesda showcased the new speech/persuasion mechanic where you will be spending points to convince a character, akin to something like Oblivion. Though currently we only have a glimpse on the system, it's certainly better than Fallout 3's random single dice rolls. Then moving on to character creation. Developers claim that cosmetically it'll be the most advanced yet, but the most impactful part will be the backgrounds and the traits. Backgrounds will start your character out with 3 perks unlocked. They can range from simple point increase to some more mechanical changes. While traits, similar to what old Fallout 1 and 2 had, give you more interesting benefits while providing some negatives as well. For example, Spaced trait will increase your health and endurance in space, while decreasing the same stats while you're on a planet. Skills, however, are gonna be an interesting change from games like Skyrim. Now, with every level, you can unlock a skill, and with each skill, you can rank it up by performing certain actions that it requires. And while it looks like more engaging and fun system, it also could easily just turn into grinding too. Then moving on to crafting. There will be resources you get from mining. Here you get to spend them on upgrading weapons, and seems that they'll be offering some decent depth for it. Now, however, we don't see any stat changes from each, so my previously level scaling issue could still be hanging about. But what we know is that research will be required to unlock everything from gun equipment to outpost buildings. And speaking of, base buildings similar to No Man's Sky and of course Fallout 4 and 76 76 will be present. Now, personally, I dislike this sort of a mechanic in any game that it is, and I just glaze over it. Learning from games that came before, like Fallout, you can gauge the approximate quality of this aspect, and it looks quite okay. Also, from the looks of things, once you put down the central beacon, in a certain radius you'll be able to build your outposts. Additionally, from the UI you can gauge that you will be producing some materials from it too. And not only base building will be available, but also spaceship building, according to the developers. Now, the first things we see are the ship interiors, which are always good to see. Additionally, you'll be choosing your crew as well, but the big thing with your ship building is that your ship building will be balancing out thrust capability of the engines versus the ship's mass. You also see the crew required for the ship's build, the speed and maneuverability, shields and other stats indicating a rather basic but common spaceship design handling. And you know, to a degree, this kinda reminds me of Kerbal Space Program, which too is releasing a new game this year. Soon, in fact. Now, when it comes to flying your ship, the more casual, friendly, again sorry for repeating, No Man's Sky-esque style is chosen. However, there is one little odd thing that you don't see in many space sims at all, and that is docking. And frankly, now that I think of it, the only space sim where you would have something like that is Kerbal. So it'll be interesting to see how it actually plays out. Now, as for landing, as I mentioned before, you won't be doing it manually, sadly. You'll be picking and choosing landing sites from the orbit and get teleported there. Now, as Bethesda claims...
And not just this system, but over 100 systems. Over 1,000 planets, all open for you to explore.
And that basically concludes all that we know from the trailer. Now, there are additional things we've learned about Starfield. A lot of it is just fluff from Todd Howard's questionable mouthhole, but here are the more important things. Music will be composed by Fallout veteran Einon Zur. I'm horrible with these names. Spaceships will not have fuel, just the jump range to limit you. That also means that the open world will not prevent you from moving to more difficult areas, though developers say it won't be easy to survive. NPCs, for the most part, as Bethesda say, are going to be very quote-unquote human, where they had to scale down the robot numbers, apparently. There apparently will be a perk similar to one from Oblivion called Adoring Fan. The game, of course, will be moddable, so get those space titties ready. Also, your character will not be voiced. Not all planets will have life or NPCs on them. And finally, don't buy pre-orders, and that's about it. But wait, there is more. That is, if you enjoy more unreliable information. Now, there have been some leaks popping up here and there, and I'll put the links down below so you can check it out for yourself, but anyways, here are some examples. For planet travel, you can fly around in atmosphere. There also will be rovers. There is a settlement takeover system. In addition, AI can build their own settlements as well. Crew can help man weapons, perform repairs on the ship, fly, etc. The game requires more intelligence. There will still be quest markers, but after Outer Wilds, the office liked more exploration-based quests. And I could go on, but this is not a leak list at least yet. So, for that, do subscribe and let me know what you think. Now, if there is one thing we can be pretty certain of, is that it's a Bethesda game, meaning that it's most likely gonna be very broken and very buggy. In the last decade or more so, the company has not released a game that has not been dogged for its pretty poor MO. Also, over the years, Bethesda has released a bunch of, shall we call them, horrible games. Elder Scrolls Blades was a massive cash grab while hunting for freemium mobile crap. Fallout 76 was universally panned and laughed at, nearly for everything it did. Even Fallout 4, the last game the Prime Studio was making, was panned for a lot of these issues. Seeing both the publishing side as well as the developer side, you can't but to be justified in keeping a high skeptical eye on this company and everything it does. However, if I may interject a little positive outlook, if nothing else, we can be pretty damn sure it will be a good open world itself. So there you go, a quicker summary of the major details we know for Starfield, and what shape it will take. Of course, I'm looking forward to covering more about it, so do come along and maybe check out other links down below, if you want to support the work I do. As for now, I'll gear up my spacesuit and prime those jetpacks to play No Man's Sky.